take, you know, especially if you want to skip a week here and there. But looking at your guys' remainders, I mean, there's a bunch of you that have no more to do, which is totally rad. A bunch of you have 1 and 2 to do.
I would say I admit whenever there's one that I look at it and go, man, I'm not feeling it.
Then you can just skip it. That's the beauty of it.
And I only have 2 left.
Exactly. That was the point. The point was not to just have 10 posted and make you do all 10. It was to have double that posted, and then you could pick half of what's out there. So I've been watching the numbers and making sure nobody's above 5 or 6 right now. Actually, I lied. 1 person is, but I haven't seen that person in like 9 weeks, so I don't know where they are. Okay.
I've done it.
He said nobody has more than 5 or 6.
I don't know. Oh, 5 or 6 left to do.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay.
It's just the head over your ears. You can't hear me. So,
Just throw something at it.
it's just, I'm not gonna throw anything at you. I like you live. Yeah, so that's that. There's a project due this week. It's a lot of geometry. Apologies. It's very little statistics, actually. It's a teeny tiny bit of statistics. Actually, the statistics in the project is minimal. It's actually, you use statistics to generate essentially a flow rate that you have to use. And the reason you have to use it, of course, is because you have very few data. Well, you'll see the point of the project. The point of the project is to give you some other way of dealing with data when you don't have enough data points to use the stuff we're talking about in class. The stuff we're talking about in class is fantastic. Here's a capital I, capital F. If you can satisfy certain conditions on the data. Michael identified one about last week, maybe, about outliers. If you've got goofy outliers, I remember you saying this, it was one data set we had. And then we also discovered in that particular data set the outliers didn't matter, but they can matter. They can matter. And if you have an extraordinarily small data set, it's hard to identify outliers because sometimes an outlier just looks like, well, as a normal data point just looks like an outlier. I've been working on a spreadsheet, I haven't finished it yet, where it generates a data set 1 point at a time and just slaps them on the graphs, and then slowly you see a curve built out of that graph. And as I'm working on it, I want to get like a Poisson distribution, a highly skewed U-shaped distribution, a bell-shaped distribution. They're not done yet, but as I'm building it, I'm realizing that for the first like 10 or 15 F9 pushes, when the data points are popping up, something will pop way out left, you're like, ooh! And you jump on it as an outlier, and then you push it a few more times, you're like, oh, it's just over there. So it's one of those things, it's hard for us to realize when you have a small data set what's unusual and what's typical. And that's the point of the project, is how do you deal with them when you have them. And what's so much fun about this method you're learning, A, it's not any textbooks, which kind of surprises me, because it's fairly straightforward. It's a beautiful tie-in to confidence intervals. And B, I've used it a couple times already. I found some more data. Apparently there was another oil leak in 2012 in Michigan, similar to this BP one, but it didn't make the news. I'm still tracking that one down. So, interesting, very interesting. There's political reasons why it wouldn't have made the news, obviously, with Keystone XL and whatnot. But you would have to use this method again, most likely, because of the scarcity of data. Another use for this was my cousin. She's a PT. When she was working on her PhD about 3 years ago, and she was working on a geriatric rehabilitation technique, I think for muscles in the arm. It's the arm or leg, I forget. Something had bent. So an elbow or a knee or something like that. It was a hot water treatment where you would immerse and soak in hot water and then try to flexibility. And she's like, I got a data set of size 3. I said, get more. She said, I can't. She had 3 people to deal with. That's all she had. I'm like, well, let's make it work. She's like, how do you make it work with 3? And I was like, oh, cousin, come here. Let's get our good friend Excel. And we basically ran through your project with her. She's like, holy crap, this is amazing. Typed it up, got it published. Awesome. So it's a great little tool that works really well if you only have a few data points. Here's the caveat, YouTube world, and they're good. They have to be good data points. You can't have 3 goofy data points that are non-representative of your population. And that's tricky. That's where research methods comes in. That's where your research methods class come in. Make sure you actually get good data. I'd rather have 3 good data points than 300 crappy ones any day. Because then at least your results tell you something. And you'll be surprised at what your results tell you. Well, maybe you won't. I don't know. It's hard to measure surprise level for students. But I think you'll be pleasantly taken aback by the fact that with 6 data points, you're able to get a better approximation than the Coast Guard did on day 1 or day 2 of the leak that happened. Do you guys remember the BP explosion, Deepwater Horizon? You guys remember it? Yeah. 86 days long. Well, accidents happen, of course. Accidents happen, and then in the backlash of all, as always happens, right? When a big accident happens, there's always a backlash about safety and about what they could have, should have, would have done. And a lot of times it's good because it casts light into things that should be done and aren't being done. But a lot of times too, it's slightly unfair. Now I'm not picking political sides here, but sometimes it's like, oh, you should have. Well, sometimes you have an outlier event. And I'm not saying this was or wasn't, because I don't know enough about the codes of those wells, but I'm kind of with you anyway. But regardless. Anyway, enjoy the project, and don't get too bummed out about the footnote on the last page, even though every time I read it, I get a little bummed out about it. So, cool? That's Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. That's Wednesday, yeah. And I still have a couple quizzes on t-testing, which we're going to keep with today. We're going to keep with t-testing today. We're going to take it a new direction, though. Up till now, last week, we did z-testing and t-testing on Monday and Wednesday. We did z-testing on Monday, we did t-testing on Wednesday. We're going to do more t-testing. So when you hear t-testing, what variable are we testing with the t-distribution? Good. We're going to keep testing u for a while. But we're going to test it in a different way and maintain confidence while we're doing it. And that might, I mean confidence, statistical confidence, not like, hey, I can do this, but statistical confidence. I want to stay at, right, I'm can do it. I want to stay at 95% in class and discuss more about that. The same template is going to work. The same template is going to work the rest of the term, the rest of the last 3 weeks we have together. I encourage you guys too, when you go to your next statistics classes, if you have more, ask me and I'll email you out some Word versions of this so you can keep it with you. It's not very common to have the templatized approach, but it really does help you while you're laying things out. Because there's so many things you have to do in the process. And I'm not saying this isn't going to change. It might even get better. One of the things I want to ask you guys at the end is how you would make it more effective. But hold it tight. It's going to help us. There is going to be a difference in how we construct the test statistic, and I think you'll see why we have to do that momentarily. It's actually the way my cousin had to construct hers. I can mute this screen right now. Any questions you guys have right now before we get into this? You'll need your data sheets too to collect some more data. I have a few extra copies up here, I think, if you need it. That's page 1, which I think we're still on. Here's page 2. Yeah. There's an old template, we don't get that anymore. So we're still on page 1. I lied. Turn it over to page 2. I lying bastard. Sheet 1, page 2. Yes. Flip side, sheet 1. Oh. Yeah, there we go. This was like 3 weeks ago, but here.
Well, I should have it.
All right. So I asked the question last time. Start this and stop it again.